Welcome to another Sinespace tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to continue working with the room floor component and show you one of the configurable buttons that you can use to make your room floor interesting for the person who buys it for a game or just for your enjoyment for living. In the room editor, there are different buttons that give you additional options. One of those is called the Options button, and you can have one or more configurable buttons in here. I have one called Window Curtains, and if I click it, then my window opens and I can see outside. If I click it again, my window closes. So I'm going to open my window, save the room, and then it'll be this way so I can enjoy looking outside and even have some fresh air. I'm going to show you how I did this by doing the next one. So let's go into the editor, and here I am in my studio, and here are my two windows. I am in my level 1 module, or an empty, and in this empty I have my floor. Here it is, my level 1 floor. And I've been using this studio for other tutorials, so you might notice that I have 4 quick placement colliders in here instead of 3, because I've added my window wall, so that you can change both of these walls to the same material if you want to. And you can also place other items on both of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the configurable buttons, because I've shown you these other parts of the component in the basic room floor tutorial. Now I have here under configurable buttons, I have 2. That means I have 2 buttons, and I have a network ID, and I click new for each one. The first one is called Window Curtain, and let's call this Window Curtain right. And I have in the events area, I have on activate, the window is closed. That's because it's activated by default, so the default state is closed. And then when I click the button, it deactivates it and it plays it and opens it. That's not necessarily intuitive, but that is how it works. So whichever one you want to be the default, closed or open, that's the one to put on activate. And I want my windows to be closed when I start. And you can do it any way you want to. Okay, so now I'm down here in my second button, because I have 2, and I'm going to make this one, instead of second curtain, I'm going to call it Window Curtain Left. Okay. The owner only and default state, we don't have to do too much with right now. The owner only is very likely for a situation where you've assigned a floor to someone and the button is only for the person who actually owns the region. Okay, so I've clicked new for my network ID, and I have the events tabs here, or the event areas. Now, you will notice that if you look through the Sinespace components, that several components have these event areas. And so they're definitely worth looking into, because it helps you to add clickable objects or material changes or the lights to come on and off, which we'll do in another tutorial. And you don't have to worry about adding the clickable activator. So it makes it easier for you. Okay, so this is where we're going to put our window, just like we did this one. But first, we have to set up our window, and that means animating the curtain. So let's find the window curtain in our module. This is still our level 1 floor, and I'm putting these all in a module because I'm eventually going to set this up as a game or a quest, and so I want the entire module to possibly disappear. Now, once you have your window set up, you'll want to make sure that you have the animation tab handy, and you can find that in Windows Animation. And you'll see down here that if you click on any object, it will say to begin animating whatever the object is, create an animator and an animation clip. Well, if I click up here on the animator, there's nothing there because I'm not using an animator anywhere, and my window curtain, which is the object, doesn't have an animator yet. So now I'm going to create one, and the button in the animation tab does that for you right away. So I click create, and it comes up with a new animation. I'm going to put this animation in the animations folder of the room furniture samples that we've been using, and this Unity package that's available on the wiki. And we've been using this for several tutorials. So now I'm going to create a new animation. This is a new one. This isn't an animation that I'm editing. So I'm going to call this window curtain open close, or close open, or whatever you want to do. Okay. Now what it does is it changes here, and it shows you, if you're familiar with keyframes and timelines, that's what it's showing you. And it's showing you where the keys are going to be. Now you'll also see that the name of your object is over here. Samples is always default 60, and right now we don't have any keyframes. Now you can also see that if you click on Add Properties, there's all kinds of properties. There's just as many as there are in a humanoid avatar. That gets very confusing. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to allow the object to give us the properties that we need. And the way that we're going to do that is to actually move the object. Now, how are we going to move these curtains so that they go up and down? Well, we're not going to move them up and down like we would do if we were using the actual move tool. And we're not going to rotate them, because curtains don't need to be rotated for this particular window. And we're not going to scale them, because to scale them would be to pull them down from the top and up from the bottom. So I'm going to Control Z, put those back where they were. We're going to use this tool at the end. This tool allows us, if you look at the arrows, to pull it one side up or one corner up or down. And that's what we're going to use for our curtains. Now, one of the things to keep in mind about creating a new animation is that you'll need to create the key first with a small movement. So if you look over at this curtain, you can see that it's a little bit higher at the bottom than the curtain that I'm using. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this up a little bit to get a keyframe to appear. So when I'm ready, I click the red dot to record, and I pull this up ever so slightly, and you can see the keyframes appear. Those, the position and the scale have changed because that's what I have changed. This is my first keyframe. Now what I can do, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay. It gives me position and it gives me scale. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. Oh, it doesn't have to be very far over. And from other tutorials, you might remember that wherever this timeline is, this white line, if you do any movement, That's where the next key is going to appear. If you copy and paste, this is where your keys will appear. So I now want my curtain to be open. Here my keys appear, and I'm going to go up, oh, not too far. I don't need it to open too much, maybe halfway. You can have it open all the way, however you want to do that. So now this is all I need to do to create my animation. But there's some things that you'll want to think about. Okay, we're going to turn off the record because the animation is finished. And if we play it, be prepared, okay, it loops automatically. So, and it loops very quickly. So what we're going to do is, I think we're going to lower the number of frames to 3. And I like to lower the number of samples, probably in this case. Let's also do 3. What that's going to do is to make the space in between each keyframe quite large. So if you pull this handle over, your last keyframe is farther away. At the same time, if you click play, oh, that's a good speed. But you can see how it snaps back to the closed position. That's because the animation is looping. Well, the animation is correct and we like the speed. Okay, so that's good. Now we're going to go into our animator. And yes, indeed, we have window, curtain, open and close. And that's what we want in our animator. Then we go to our hierarchy, up to our curtain. And we see that we have an animator in here. We're going to activate that animator. And our starting position is closed. Now we need to have this curtain open when we click the button and close when we click the button. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the animator. We're going to go down to this animation. Okay, you can see the motion is, and I'm going to call this open. You can call it closed, you can call it open. It doesn't matter what you call it as long as you remember what you call it when it's moving forward. Okay. Then what we do is we go to our animations. We find the window, curtain, open, close animation. We pull it up into the animator again, but now there's a couple of things that we're going to change. Now we're going to call it close. And this one, instead of moving forward, we want it to move backward. And the way we do that is to put a minus sign in front of the 1. Now you can have it travel at half speed. You can have it travel at twice the speed. That doesn't matter for our purposes. What we want is we want the open to move at the speed of 1 in one direction. And when it closes, it moves at speed of 1 in the opposite direction. Now there's one more thing we need to do with the animation itself, which is this one, window, curtain, open, close. We need to untick the loop. A lot of times when you're doing gestures or dances or emotes, you want your animation to loop. But when we're opening a curtain on click, we want it to not loop because otherwise it'll just keep opening and closing and opening and closing and opening and closing. Okay, now having highlighted the animation, we're going to go back in here and there's one more thing I want to call your attention to. This is very important for animating objects. And what I want to show you is the position here. We have a -9, -29, and even when we move to the last position, it's still -9 and -29. This is in relation to the parent empty or the parent object called level 1 module. So the animation is animating this curtain in relation to its parent. Now, let's go down and I want you to look at the curtain that was animated already. That one is called my window curtain test because I wanted to do a test, and I did. And if you notice the position in the X and the Z, it's -559 instead of 9 and -654 instead of -29. Now what this means is that this one is animated in relation to the world. It is not in a parent object. So when it animates, it's going to animate at its own position. If I were to take this window curtain test, put it inside my level 1 parent empty, when I clicked the button to animate it, it would immediately snap down to -559, -654, because that is the position that the animation is going to. So if you've ever tried to animate an object or a dance or something of that sort, and your object is inside a parent or an empty, and you're having trouble keeping it in place, this might be why. So what we need to do is to make sure that you decide where that curtain is going to go before you start to animate it, because those animation location positions, those are the numbers that the animation is going to snap to. And it's very likely that as soon as we hit the button, it would disappear because it's going to the position where it was animated. Okay, so now that we have our curtain animated, we have an animator on it, and in our animator we have both positions. We have open and we have closed. Now we can go back into our level 1 floor, scroll down to the second event area, and we're going to add runtime. I like to use editor and runtime, although in this case it really doesn't work in the editor because we don't have the in-world editor to do the test, not very easily. So we're just going to use runtime. The object is the window curtain, so that's going to go into both the activate and the deactivate. And we can see that was the case up here. This was the window curtain test. Okay, you can either drag that window curtain in there, or you can click the selection button and find your object window curtain. That's why I have named them differently. Otherwise I would get confused and possibly pull the same one into both slots, into all four, and I don't want to do that. I want to have two separate buttons. My function, since I have an activator, I'm going to go down here, pass by all these confusing things, all of which can do something, but I'm going to go down here to my animator, and I'm going to click play. And I'm going to do the same thing for the deactivate button. Play and play string is the one you want, because that's the one that allows you to write in here. Now I have this curtain right, the default is closed, so now I'm going to have the default open, just to show you the difference. Okay, and that's all you do. The curtain should be ready to work. I'm going to click my scene export settings. Go up here to File, save my scene, go to my scene export settings, and upload. And I will be back in just a moment to see if both of my buttons work. And here we are again in the studio, and you can see both of the windows are now open. And if we look in the room editor, and if we click on options, you'll see now that we have two curtains. We have window curtain left and window curtain right. So if we click window curtain left, enabling closes the window. And if we click window curtain right, remember we left this open earlier. When we click enable, it closes. This just shows you that you can decide which one is initiated by activating the button and which one is initiated by deactivating. And that in our room floor, you can see the first curtain is on activate is closed, on deactivate is open. The second one, on activate, is open, on deactivate is closed. So rather, hopefully, this is not so much confusing as it is helps you to understand that you really do have control over what happens. All right, well, enjoy your room options. I will have another tutorial and show you the materials button and the lighting button at another time.